Hi, and welcome to Evidence-Based Practices Learning Module, Building a Classroom Schedule. To access supporting resources for this and other PAI learning modules, access the Padlet QR code on your screen or the Patent website at www.patent.net. Once on the Patent website, locate the Evidence-Based Practices heading, then select Autism. On the Autism page, click on Evidence-Based Practices Learning Modules. In this module, we will provide an overview of effective evidence-based practices for developing a classroom schedule. This session will empower viewers with knowledge of the critical role of schedules in producing instructor retention and student outcomes. Viewers of this module will be able to follow the procedures outlined to develop their own classroom schedule. Before we move into the content of this learning module, please pause and complete this short survey by accessing the QR code or the link on your screen. Please note your completion of this survey is completely voluntary and anonymous, and the data will only be analyzed for enhancement of our evidence-based practice learning modules development. We appreciate your contribution to the development of this series of modules and resources to support educators like you all over the Commonwealth. Please pause and complete the survey before continuing on. Thank you for completing the Classroom Schedule survey. Now let's get learning. Evidence-based classroom management practices require teachers to manage and organize materials, the physical environment, and the allocation of instructional time. This module will focus on how to develop your classroom schedule to be most efficient and effective. Allocation of instructional time is critical in ensuring active student engagement, which is one of the factors directly correlated with increases in student achievement and decreases in problematic behavior. Effective classroom schedules have many benefits for both instructors and students. Let's review a few of these benefits in more detail. Classroom schedules increase accountability for both teachers and students by allocating staff and students to specific tasks. Effective classroom schedules should be able to answer who is doing what instruction or activity with whom, and where is the instruction occurring. Being able to answer these questions ensures you as the teacher have the day planned, ready to be implemented, and aligned to meet all of your students' instructional needs. Schedules allow teachers to allocate time for students to access reinforcement, rewards, and preferred activities. As a result of such planning, schedules inform students when these activities will be available and discourage students from accessing reinforcement on their own or not when the teacher intended. There are two main types of classroom schedules, staff schedules and student schedules. Both types of schedules have their place in effective classroom management procedures, and in many cases, both schedules can be present in the same classroom. Let's briefly review the two types of schedules. Staff schedules are intended to inform staff of the necessary information for the school day. This schedule is referenced throughout the day and guides staff-student interactions. Staff schedules may be referenced by students, but is intended to serve as a guide of all the classroom happenings for the staff. An evidence-based staff schedule can answer all of the following questions for every time interval. Who is the staff working with? When will the staff be working, including start and end times? Where, at what location will the staff be working? And what instruction will the staff be providing? Staff schedules should be simple and easy to read and follow. Student schedules are intended to guide and inform the student about their daily activities. Students require explicit teaching to read, use, and develop schedules. Not all classrooms or all students will need or benefit from an individual schedule. Student schedules can be posted with staff schedules and can be whole group, individual, posted, or handheld. The key to student schedules is determining what the schedule will be used for and teaching the student to use the schedule effectively. Now that we've provided you with some explanation of why schedules are a part of effective classroom management practices, the many benefits of a schedule, and the two main types of schedules, it's time to provide you with procedures to develop your own staff schedule. Before moving through the remaining slides, please access the supporting resources for this module via the Padlet QR code on your screen or via the Patent website at www.patent.net. To access via the Patent website, locate the Evidence-Based Practices heading, then select Autism. On the Autism page, click on Evidence-Based Practices Learning Modules. Preparing to build your staff schedule will begin with gathering information from a variety of sources. First, begin with gathering information about you and your staff's workday and work hours. Create a document or list of this information for future reference and use. Pertinent information to have may include arrival and departure times, lunch and break times, days working or not working, planning and prep time, and any other contractual obligations and hours, to name a few. Next, gather your school building, classroom, and student level information. This will require you to gather information about schedules specific to your building, the grade level or levels you serve, other service providers you may collaborate with, such as specialist teachers or related service providers like speech and language pathologists, physical therapists, occupational therapists, or others. Last but not least, review your students' IEP, including specifically their goals, objectives, specially designed instruction, and inclusion plans. This information, along with any assessments you complete, will guide your allocation of instructional time to meet each student's needs each day. Again, you will want to gather this information into one place to reference and use later. Now let's begin building your schedule. Start by creating a table or grid with rows and columns to use as interval blocks. Remember, there are blank documents available in the resources, or you can draft your own table or grid in a Word doc, Excel, with pencil and paper, or on a whiteboard. Using your schedule grid, fill in consistent time intervals on one of the axes. Then fill in all staff names for which you have gathered information. You may consider having an extra column or row for staff and student information. Here is a sample of a schedule grid where the horizontal axis contains instructor names at the top of each column, and the vertical axis contains start times for each row. This grid includes 60 interval blocks. Throughout this module, we will model how to complete this grid for all of the interval blocks for all of the instructors listed. Take a look at the vertical axis of time intervals. You may notice some variation in length of time in each interval. In general, you want to allocate time intervals as consistently as possible, and generally no longer than 30 minutes. However, please remember these are general guidelines that need to be individualized to meet your setting and student needs. You will see in upcoming slides why these intervals vary and how to complete each interval block. On this slide, you will see a schedule grid developed following a secondary period schedule. Again, time intervals should meet building, staff, and student instructional needs. On this grid, you will notice the labeling of the horizontal axes is now for time intervals, and the vertical axis is for instructors. The orientation of your grid and labeling conventions is up to you. If you'd like, take a pause now to access the available schedule grid resources for this module or develop your own schedule grid. You can choose to work through the developing of your schedule as we proceed through this module by hitting pause at any time, or continue on as we show you the steps. Once your time intervals and staff names are listed, begin filling in your non-negotiables from the information you gathered. This is your staff and student information from our discussion on slides 15 and 16. In this sample, you see the interval blocks. Note the non-negotiables that were added include staff arrival, tasks and procedures for staff during this time, student arrival, plans for student assessment or probes, staff and student lunches, student recess, teacher planning time, and activities of daily living. Remember, this is just an example of components, and you will include the non-negotiables relevant to your setting. Once the non-negotiable times are all accounted for, you will know what times you have left to schedule the rest of the day. Keep in mind, as you are completing each interval time block of your schedule grid, you want to answer these questions. Who, which student or group of students is the staff member working with? In the sample grid on the previous slide, we are using student 1, student 2 to label our grid. When will the staff member be working with the students? Remember to include start and end times. What will the staff member be doing with a student or group of students? What specific instruction will be occurring? Where will the staff and students be during the time interval on the sample grid? On our sample schedule on the previous slide, a number is listed at the end of the block with this information. These numbers correspond to a labeling system of areas within the classroom. Take a pause now to update your schedule grid to include these components for all of the non-negotiable time blocks you completed on your schedule grid. Once you are finished, continue to the next slide. The next step in schedule development is building out the student's schedule, taking into consideration all information you have gathered to make informed decisions about what the student's schedule will look like. The schedule you are developing will account for all instructional needs identified by your state or grade level standards, your district or intermediate unit, and the student's individualized education program. Here are a few more considerations while you fill in your grid. Aim for 75% of the total available time intervals to be tied to explicit and specific student instruction. Be prepared to make adjustments to your schedule. Schedules should be flexible and meet student and staff needs as they change throughout the school year. And lastly, consider visibility. Visibility promotes the use of schedules. Consider how you will post, share, or project your schedule for anyone in the classroom to see and access. For now, pause this session and continue developing your classroom schedule. When you are ready, continue to the next slides, and you will see some example schedules and wrap up this module. We hope you have enjoyed this evidence-based practices learning module, and it has provided meaningful information to inform your educator practices. To wrap up this module, please pause and complete this short classroom schedule survey by accessing the QR code or the link on the screen. As a reminder, this information will not be shared with anyone and will only be stored and analyzed by Pat and staff to enhance this learning module. Please pause and complete the survey before continuing on. Thank you for taking the time to view our evidence-based practices learning module, Building a Classroom Schedule. We hope you continue to access these resources and wish you much success. To learn more about Patent initiatives, resources, trainings, and more learning modules, visit the Patent website.